Let's be clear from the start. Using silence as bait to make an avoidance passion explode is not a reliable strategy, not an ethical approach, and not something that creates healthy relationship even if it temporarily works. But there is a truth underneath the sensational framing, and that truth is worth understanding. When you genuinely detach from an avoidant, when your silence comes from real moving on, rather than from strategic manipulation, it sometimes triggers pursuit from them. Not always, not even usually, but sometimes. And understanding why this happens, what it means, and what you should do with the pursuit when it comes, is important for protecting yourself from getting pulled back into dysfunction that didn't work the first time and won't work if you return to it. The avoidance pursuit, when you go silent, is not about passion exploding. It's about panic activating. The avoidant isn't suddenly overwhelmed with feelings they've been suppressing. They're suddenly overwhelmed with fear that they've lost control, that you've moved on, that they're not as important to you as their ego needs them to be. The pursuit is driven by loss aversion, by fear of abandonment they've been defending against, by need to restore the dynamic where they had power through your pursuit of them. When you go silent, when you stop chasing, when you genuinely detach, the avoidant sometimes pursues not because they've fallen more deeply in love, but because their attachment system is finally activating now that they're facing actual loss rather than theoretical loss. The pursuit feels like passion. It might even be experienced by them as passion, but it's panic disguised as passion, fear disguised as desire, control seeking disguised as connection seeking. And understanding this distinction is crucial because responding to their panic pursuit as if it's genuine readiness for relationship is a mistake that will cost you months or years of your life, repeating a cycle that goes nowhere. You need to hear this clearly. Your silence should not be a strategic tool to manipulate the avoidant into wanting you. Your silence should be the natural result of protecting yourself from someone who can't meet your needs. If you're going silent to create a reaction in the avoidant, you're still organizing your behavior around them, still trying to control their response, still invested in outcome that depends on them changing. That's not detachment, that's anxious attachment using different tactics. Real silence, healing silence, protective silence, comes from genuinely moving on, from directing your energy toward your own life rather than toward managing their feelings about you, from accepting that this person is not capable of meeting your needs and acting accordingly. The irony is that strategic silence, silence as manipulation, rarely works because avoidance can sense when you're still invested, when you're performing detachment rather than actually being detached. But genuine silence, genuine moving on, sometimes does trigger their pursuit, because genuine detachment is the one thing their psychology isn't prepared to handle. Why genuine silence sometimes triggers avoidant pursuit, and why it doesn't mean what you think. When you genuinely go silent, when you actually detach and move on with your life, the avoidant notices. They notice because the energy that was flowing from you to them has stopped. They notice because you're no longer available for the dynamic they were comfortable with, you pursuing, them withholding. They notice because suddenly they can't predict your behavior, can't control your attention, can't take your availability for granted. And the noticing creates discomfort in them that sometimes manifests as pursuit. But understanding what's driving the pursuit is essential to making good decisions about how to respond to it. The pursuit is driven first by the avoidance loss of control. While you were pursuing them, they had control through withholding. They controlled the pace of intimacy, the level of connection, whether the relationship continued, but your silence has taken that control away. They can't control you through withholding anymore because you're not pursuing anything from them. They can't manipulate through distance because you're not trying to close distance. The loss of control is deeply uncomfortable for someone whose primary coping mechanism is maintaining control in relationships. And the discomfort drives them to pursue you as attempt to restore control, to get you back into the position of pursuing them, to re-establish the dynamic where they felt powerful and safe. The pursuit is not evidence they're ready for a relationship. It's evidence they want control back. The pursuit is also driven by the avoidance attachment system finally activating. Avoidants can suppress their attachment system as long as the person is available. Your availability allowed them to minimize their attachment to you, to focus on your flaws and incompatibilities, to maintain emotional distance that kept their attachment system quiet. But your absence, your genuine moving on, has activated their attachment system in ways your presence never did. Now they're feeling the fear of loss, the pain of your absence, the recognition that they care more than they admitted. The attachment system activation feels like intense feeling, feels like passion, feels like finally recognizing what you mean to them. But attachment system activation is not the same as capacity to sustain healthy relationship. The avoidant can feel intensely attached to you while being completely incapable of the vulnerability and consistency that relationship requires. Their feelings are real, but their capacity is unchanged. The pursuit is driven by the avoidant's ego being unable to tolerate that you're not affected by them anymore. The avoidant's ego requires believing they're unforgettable, that people who've been with them carry them forever, that their impact is permanent. Your silence threatens this ego structure. Your silence says they're forgettable, or at least forgotten enough that you've moved on. Your silence says they don't impact you the way their ego needs to impact you, and the ego can't tolerate this. The pursuit is ego-driven attempt to restore their importance, to get evidence that they still matter to you, to prove that you haven't really moved on. The pursuit is about their ego needs, not about genuine desire for partnership with you. The pursuit is also driven by the avoidant suddenly idealizing what you had together. While you were present, the avoidant focused on problems, on incompatibilities, on reasons the relationship couldn't work. But now that you're absent, now that you're unavailable, memory is being filtered through loss, and the filtering is removing the negative and emphasizing the positive. The avoidant is remembering the good moments, is recognizing your positive qualities they dismissed while you were available, is idealizing the relationship now that it's over. The idealization makes them pursue because suddenly you seem perfect in retrospect. But the idealization is not based on reality. It's based on absence making heart grow fonder, on selective memory, on the avoidance pattern of wanting what they can't have. If you respond to their pursuit, if you become available again, the idealization will collapse, and they'll return to seeing all the problems they saw before. What the avoidance pursuit actually looks like, and what it reveals. When the avoidant pursues you after your silence, the pursuit has specific characteristics that reveal it's coming from panic rather than readiness. The avoidant reaches out with messages that seem casual but are actually checking if you'll respond. Hey, how have you been? Or I saw something that made me think of you, or just checking in. The casualness is defensive. They're testing the waters without risking too much vulnerability. They're seeing if you're still available, if the door is still open, if they still have access to you. The casual reach out is not genuine interest in your well-being. It's reconnaissance to determine your availability and your emotional state regarding them. The pursuit often includes the avoidant suddenly being more available than they were during the relationship. They're texting more frequently, they're initiating contact, they're suggesting getting together. They're doing all the things you wish they'd do when you were together. And the increased availability feels like evidence they've changed, like they finally recognized what they lost, and they're ready to do things differently. But the increased availability is typically driven by fear of loss rather than by internal growth. They're pursuing because you're unavailable, not because they've developed capacity to sustain pursuit once you're available again. The pursuit is about recapturing you, not about being different with you. The avoidance pursuit also often includes expressions of regret and recognition of their mistakes. They're admitting they didn't treat you well, they're acknowledging they took you for granted, they're saying they understand why you left and they don't blame you. The admissions feel validating. Finally, they're seeing what you saw, admitting what you experienced. But admissions of wrongdoing are not the same as capacity to do better. The avoidant can fully understand what they did wrong and still be completely incapable of doing differently, because understanding doesn't create capacity. Only therapeutic work creates capacity. The regret is real, but the regret alone doesn't mean anything has changed about their ability to show up in relationship. The pursuit sometimes includes the avoidant making promises about change. They're saying they're working on themselves, they're going to do better, they want another chance to prove they can be different. The promises are designed to get you to re-engage, to give them access to you again, to restore the relationship. But the promises should be evaluated against evidence. Are they in therapy? Have they been in therapy consistently for months? Can they articulate specific insights they've gained and specific skills they're developing? Are they demonstrating changed behavior in areas you can observe? Promises without evidence are just words designed to manipulate you into giving them another chance they haven't earned through actual work. The pursuit should be met with skepticism unless there's concrete evidence of sustained therapeutic intervention. Why responding to their pursuit usually recreates the same dynamic. If you respond to the avoidance pursuit, if you allow yourself to be pulled back in by their increased attention and expressions of regret and promises of change, you're very likely to find yourself right back in the dynamic that drove you to silence in the first place. The avoidance pursuit is motivated by your unavailability. Once you respond, once you make yourself available again, the motivation for pursuit disappears. The avoidant got what they wanted: your attention, evidence they still matter to you, restoration of the dynamic where they have control. And once they have these things, the fear that was driving the pursuit subsides. When the fear subsides, the pursuit stops, and you're left with the same avoidant who was emotionally unavailable, inconsistent, and incapable of vulnerability before. Nothing has actually changed except that you gave them another opportunity to repeat their patterns with you. The dynamic recreates because the avoidance pursuit was about restoring equilibrium for them, not about wanting genuine relationship with you. They were uncomfortable with you being unavailable, uncomfortable with having lost control, uncomfortable with the possibility that you'd moved on. So they pursued you to eliminate that discomfort. But eliminating discomfort is not the same as desiring intimacy. Once you're back, once the discomfort is gone, the avoidant returns to their baseline: defended, distant, unavailable. The cycle is predictable. You're available, they're distant, you go silent, they pursue, you respond, they're distant again. The cycle can repeat indefinitely as long as you keep responding to their pursuit, but the cycle never evolves into actual partnership because the avoidance capacity hasn't changed. Only the circumstances have changed temporarily. Responding to their pursuit also reinforces the avoidance pattern rather than disrupting it. Every time you respond to their pursuit, you're teaching them that they can treat you poorly, that you'll leave, that they can win you back through minimal effort, and that no real change is required from them. You're training them that pursuit after distance works, that promises without action are sufficient, that you'll accept breadcrumbs as long as those breadcrumbs are delivered with the right words. The reinforcement makes them more likely to repeat the pattern because the pattern works for them. They get to avoid vulnerability while maintaining access to you. They get to control the dynamic while you do all the work of hoping and forgiving and trying again. The dynamic recreates also because your needs haven't changed and their capacity hasn't changed. You need emotional availability, consistency, vulnerability, progression toward commitment. These needs are legitimate and fundamental to partnership, but the avoidant is still incapable of meeting these needs unless they've done extensive therapeutic work to develop capacity they didn't have before. If they haven't done that work, and you can tell they haven't if they're not in ongoing therapy and can't articulate specific growth, then they still can't meet your needs. You'll be back to accepting less than you need, suppressing your requirements to fit their limitations, making yourself smaller to accommodate their defended state. And that pattern is what drove you to silence initially. Returning to it guarantees you'll need to go silent again, or you'll stay in dysfunction that damages you progressively over time. What genuine detachment looks like versus strategic silence. Genuine detachment is not about getting a reaction from the avoidant. Genuine detachment is about releasing investment in the avoidant's feelings, behaviors, or choices. It's about directing your energy toward your own life, your healing, your growth, your connections with people who can meet you. It's about accepting that the avoidant is not capable of relationship you need, and making peace with that reality. Genuine detachment means you're not monitoring their social media, not asking mutual friends about them, not organizing your activities around potentially running into them. You're not thinking about them constantly. When thoughts of them arise, you can observe those thoughts without being consumed by them, can acknowledge the thoughts and return attention to your present moment. Genuine detachment is quiet, internal, sustainable. It's not performance for anyone. It's just the natural state of having moved on. Strategic silence, by contrast, is performance designed to create reaction. Strategic silence means you're going silent while constantly thinking about the avoidant, while checking to see if they've noticed your silence, while hoping your silence is making them miss you. You're not actually detached, you're highly attached, but expressing your attachment through absence rather than through presence. You're still organizing your behavior around them, still trying to control their response, still invested in outcome. Strategic silence is exhausting because it requires constant self-monitoring and other monitoring. You have to maintain the silence while managing your impulse to break it. You have to perform indifference while feeling anything but indifferent. Strategic silence is manipulation, and manipulation is not foundation for healthy relationship even if it temporarily works to create the response you want. The difference between genuine detachment and strategic silence is also evident in how you feel. Genuine detachment feels peaceful, feels like release, feels like you're finally breathing after holding your breath for months or years. There's grief, certainly. Grief about the relationship not working. Grief about time invested in someone who couldn't reciprocate. But underneath the grief is peace about the decision. clarity about the incompatibility, relief about no longer trying to make dysfunction work. Strategic silence feels tense, feels like you're in constant state of waiting and wondering, feels like the relationship is still happening but through absence rather than through presence. If your silence doesn't feel peaceful, if you're constantly wondering whether they've noticed, if you're hoping for their pursuit, you're in strategic silence, not genuine detachment. Genuine detachment also means that if the avoidant does pursue you, you're not tempted to respond. You're actually done, actually moved on, actually not interested in revisiting relationship that didn't work. The pursuit might be interesting to observe as evidence that they're finally feeling your absence, but it doesn't create desire in you to re-engage. You recognize their pursuit as panic rather than readiness, as pattern rather than growth. And you maintain your boundaries because those boundaries are protecting something you value: your peace, your progress in healing, your commitment to not accepting less than you need. Strategic silence, by contrast, is designed to create pursuit that you fully intend to respond to. The response is the goal. Getting them to want you again is the point. And this goal reveals that you haven't actually moved on, you've just changed tactics while remaining stuck in the dynamic. The only circumstances under which avoidant pursuit might be worth considering. If the avoidant pursues you after your genuine detachment, there are very limited circumstances under which their pursuit might be worth considering, rather than dismissing. The first and most important circumstance is evidence of sustained therapeutic work. The avoidant needs to have been in therapy, specifically attachment-focused therapy, for a minimum of 6 months and ideally a year or more. They need to be currently in therapy, not to have gone briefly and quit. And they need to be able to articulate what they're working on, what insights they've gained, what they're learning about their patterns. Therapy mentioned in passing is not sufficient. Therapy needs to be ongoing commitment with demonstrated impact on their self-awareness and capacity. The second circumstance is demonstrated behavioral change that you can observe. Changed behavior doesn't mean promises about being different. It means you can see them being different in ways that are relevant to what made the relationship fail. If they were inconsistent, you need to see consistency in their communication with you during this pursuit phase, in their follow-through on what they say they'll do, in their presence when they say they'll be present. If they were emotionally unavailable, you need to see vulnerability, sharing about their feelings, their struggles, their internal experience, without you having to pull it out of them. If they couldn't commit, you need to see clarity, clear statements about wanting relationship, clear follow-through on building toward relationship, clear progression rather than ambiguity. Changed behavior over months is evidence worth considering. Changed words without behavioral change is not. The third circumstance is the avoidant taking full responsibility for relationship failure, without blaming you or circumstances. The avoidant needs to be able to say, "I destroyed the relationship through my patterns. My fear prevented me from showing up for you. My inability to be vulnerable created distance. My inconsistency hurt you. This was my issue, not yours, and I'm in therapy working to develop capacity I didn't have." Full responsibility without defensiveness, without "but you were also," or "but I was dealing with," is essential. The ability to take full responsibility indicates they've done enough work to see themselves clearly, to recognize their patterns as problems, to understand the impact of their behavior. Partial responsibility or blame sharing indicates they're still defending, still rationalizing, still not ready for real change. The fourth circumstance is time. The avoidant needs to have been working on themselves for a substantial period before their pursuit is worth considering. We're talking months at minimum, ideally a year or more. Change takes time. Attachment wounds don't heal in weeks. Therapy requires sustained commitment over extended period to create real transformation. If the avoidant is pursuing you shortly after your detachment, within days or weeks, their pursuit is panic, not readiness. They haven't had time to do the work that would make them different. But if significant time has passed, if they've been demonstrably in therapy for a year, if you can see behavioral evidence of change, then perhaps their pursuit is worth considering rather than dismissing automatically. What you should do when the avoidant pursues you. When the avoidant pursues you after your silence, your response should be based on your genuine state, not on strategic calculation about what will make them pursue harder. If you're genuinely moved on, if you're actually not interested, if your detachment is real, then you should maintain your boundaries. Respond minimally or not at all. Do not engage in extended conversation. Do not allow them to pull you back into dynamic of explaining yourself, defending your choices, or managing their feelings about your absence. A simple, "I've moved on and I'm not interested in reconnecting," is sufficient if you choose to respond at all. No explanation beyond that is required or advisable. Detailed explanation just gives them information to use to try to change your mind. If you're not genuinely moved on, if you're still interested but you're protecting yourself through boundaries, be honest with yourself about that. Don't pretend to be detached when you're not. But also don't respond to their pursuit unless the circumstances described in the previous section are met. Therapy, behavioral change, full responsibility, time. If these circumstances aren't met, maintain your boundary even though part of you wants to respond. Respond with clarity about what would need to be true for you to consider reconnecting. I would only consider reconnecting if you've been in consistent therapy for at least 6 months and can demonstrate sustained behavioral change. Until those conditions are met, I'm not available. Setting clear conditions is different from strategic silence. It's honest about what you need to feel safe considering the relationship again. You should also use their pursuit as information, not as validation. Their pursuit tells you that your absence affected them, that they're feeling the loss, that their attachment system is activated. This information confirms you mattered, confirms the connection was real, confirms they're more attached than they showed while you were available. But the information doesn't change the fundamental reality. They're still the same person with the same limitations, unless they've done serious therapeutic work. Their pursuit validates your experience and your importance, but it doesn't obligate you to respond, to give them another chance, or to make yourself available to someone who hasn't developed capacity to treat you well. Use the validation to reinforce your decision to protect yourself, not as reason to compromise your protection. If you do decide to engage with their pursuit, because they've met the conditions, because you've verified they're in therapy and can demonstrate change, engage slowly and with maintained boundaries. Don't jump back into relationship. Don't assume that pursuit means readiness for what didn't work before. Start with conversation, move to limited time together, watch for evidence that change is sustained, not just performed. Pay attention to whether they can maintain vulnerability, consistency, and clear intention over time as you're present again. Be willing to walk away immediately if you see them reverting to old patterns once you're available. Giving them a chance doesn't mean giving them infinite chances. It means observing carefully whether they've actually developed capacity to be different and being willing to leave again if they haven't. The truth about silence, pursuit, and whether any of it matters. The truth is that whether the avoidant pursues you when you go silent is ultimately irrelevant to your healing and your future. Their pursuit is about them, their panic, their attachment system, their ego needs. It's not about them being ready for you. It's not about the relationship being salvageable. It's not about you being so special that you're the one who finally gets through to them. Their pursuit is just what happens sometimes when avoidants lose control of a dynamic they were comfortable with. And the pursuit almost never translates into the avoidant being capable of sustained, healthy relationship. Because pursuit driven by fear of loss is not the same as capacity for intimacy driven by internal growth and healing. What matters is not whether they pursue you, but whether you're genuinely healing. Are you in therapy? Are you examining your patterns that made you attracted to an avoidant in the first place? Are you developing secure attachment within yourself? Are you building life that's fulfilling whether or not you're in relationship? Are you learning to trust yourself, to honor your needs, to enforce boundaries that protect you? This is what matters. The avoidant's response to your silence is distraction from the real work, which is your work on yourself. Their pursuit can validate that you mattered, but you should already know you mattered from your own experience of the relationship. You don't need their pursuit to confirm your worth or the relationship's significance. The truth is also that using silence as bait is manipulation that undermines your integrity and your healing. If you're going silent strategically to get a reaction, rather than genuinely to protect yourself, you're staying stuck in unhealthy patterns. You're trying to control someone else rather than accepting what you can't control and focusing on what you can control, which is yourself. Manipulation is not path to healthy relationship. Manipulation might get temporary results you want, but results achieved through manipulation are not sustainable and don't create trust or genuine connection. The only silence worth maintaining is genuine silence that comes from releasing the avoidant from your life and focusing on yourself. The painful truth is that the avoidance passion is probably not about to explode in the way the title promises. What's more likely is that your genuine detachment will create pursuit that's driven by panic. That pursuit will tempt you to believe they've changed, that you'll respond hoping this time is different, and that you'll find yourself right back in the dynamic that hurt you, because the avoidance capacity hasn't increased even though their pursuit intensity has temporarily increased. The click-worthy promise is not the reality. The reality is that avoidants change through therapy over years, not through losing you and realizing what they lost. Their pursuit after your silence is evidence they're affected by your absence, not evidence they're ready to be different in your presence. What you deserve instead of hoping for avoidant pursuit. You deserve relationship with someone who doesn't need to lose you to recognize your value. You deserve someone who sees what you offer while you're offering it, who appreciates your presence while you're present, who chooses you consistently rather than pursuing you only when you're unavailable. You deserve someone whose passion for you is visible when you're together, not just when you're gone. You deserve a partner who can be vulnerable, who can show up emotionally, who can build with you rather than destroying through their defended state what you're trying to create. You deserve a relationship that doesn't require you to go silent to get basic attention and consideration. You deserve someone who initiates, who pursues you not from panic but from genuine desire to be close to you, who does the work of maintaining connection rather than leaving all relationship labor to you. You deserve someone whose love is expressed through consistent presence and action rather than through occasional pursuit between long periods of withdrawal. You deserve a relationship that feels easy in its foundation, even though all relationships require work. Easy because you're both showing up, both invested, both capable of intimacy. You deserve to be with someone who's done their therapeutic work, who's developed capacity for healthy relationship, who has secure attachment, or who's actively working toward it. You deserve someone who doesn't need your silence to activate their attachment system, who can be attached while you're present and available, who doesn't need the threat of loss to feel their feelings for you. You deserve someone whose pursuit of you is consistent from the beginning, not something that only emerges after you've left. Most importantly, you deserve to stop organizing your life around whether an avoidant person might pursue you if you play your cards right. You deserve to organize your life around your own healing, your own growth, your own happiness that's not dependent on any specific person choosing you. You deserve freedom from the exhausting work of trying to get someone to want you, trying to make yourself small enough or scarce enough or perfect enough that someone will finally see your worth. Your worth is inherent. It's not proven by avoidant pursuit. It's not increased by being chosen by someone who couldn't choose you when you were available. You deserve to know your worth independent of anyone's pursuit or lack thereof, and to use that knowing to choose only people who can meet you, who can see you, who can love you in ways that are functional and not just felt. The avoidance passion exploding through your silence is fantasy. The reality is messy, painful, and rarely resolves the way you hope. Your silence, if it's genuine, might trigger their pursuit. But their pursuit will probably be panic disguised as passion, control-seeking disguised as desire, temporary performance that disappears once you're available again. Don't use your silence as bait. Use your silence as protection, as boundary, as the natural consequence of choosing yourself over someone who can't choose you. And if the avoidant pursues, see it for what it is. Information that you mattered combined with high likelihood that nothing has actually changed about their capacity to love you well. Let them pursue if they must. But you keep walking forward into your healed life, toward people who don't need to lose you to learn to value you, toward relationships that work from the beginning because both people are ready, capable, and choosing connection over fear. That's what you deserve. That's what matters. That's what your silence should be protecting you for. Not manipulation of someone who can't meet you, but preservation of yourself for someone who can.